kill. So he wakes up in this life and spontaneously not only doesn't want to kill the lice, but has compassion for them. His mother hadn't had time to teach him this. Now, the other example, this is the two examples I want to use, of the role of attachment, of how it blinds us. Another little boy, another woman I met at Kofan Monastery, she was in tears. She came to her room, came to my room, and she was distraught. She was listening to the Lama Zopa's teachings about karma, how, you know, we're all programmed with our own stuff from past lives, blah, blah, blah. And she said her boy, her 29-year-old son, had died 5 years before, scuba diving. And she said since a tiny boy, I forget, 3 maybe, 5, when he first went fishing, it's like he fell in love with fishing. So that became his profession. So the point is, the Buddha's view, like I'm saying from yesterday a little bit, we come programmed with our own tendencies. With our own tendencies. This is a crucial point in the bigger picture in Buddhism. This is the meaning of karma. Like I said, it's extensively described in literature. It's just that it's not our view. I mean, we either have the view that God made us or that Mummy and Daddy made us. They're the two main options on our planet. This is the third option, you know, it's a third viewpoint. So the implication of this, of course, is that, you know, as I said, as the Dalai Lama calls karma, it's self-creation. We come into this world programmed with our own stuff. There's one little boy who's got a tendency to kill, and another little boy who doesn't have a tendency to kill. So the example of a little boy with a tendency to kill, in this case, fish, he was a really kind man, she said. He had, you know how we talked yesterday about the second track of karma, which is all our personality traits, our tendencies. So he was a really kind boy, kind, generous, intelligent, loving, but he had a particular tendency to kill. And that's common in our culture, you know, it's very common. Coming back from the Christian teachings that God made these creatures and it's okay to kill them, and second, coming back from the Jewish ones too, but also coming back from the scientific view. It's only really now that science is beginning to think that maybe some animals have feelings, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you know, a while ago that was a surprise to us. Animals don't suffer. Creatures don't suffer. Of course not. That's the view we've had in our world. So the Buddha's view is different, that these are sentient beings. Every sentient being wants to be happy. No sentient being wants to suffer. So the point is this. There's this little boy, from the time he first met fishing, kind of, if you like, fell in love with it. It became familiar to him. It looked familiar to him. It was attractive to him because of the karmic imprint. So that means he became very attached to it. That means it was like he thought it was, attachment paints a picture of that scenario, that event, that job, that thing, and that was what he was attracted to do. That's how we all do. We all do that. So all those years, you could say he went fishing. He would catch the fish, and there are the fish in the boat. You know, and I didn't know this until much later about fish. I didn't realise how fish died. I didn't know they'd just die slowly, you know. They're in the boat and their bodies are moving. So he's a kind, compassionate man. And this is the point about attachment. It's like a honey-covered razor blade. It looks very benign. It looks very kind. So he's a happy guy. He's a kind man. But he's got this thing for fishing, so he catches the fish. So his mother always didn't like fishing and didn't want to criticize him, but he always wanted her to come fishing with him in his boat, you know. She didn't want to. One day she went fishing, and this is the point I'm making now about attachment. Because he was attached, he had a view, an entire elaborate view of how marvelous fishing is, how fantastic it is every day going out. He thought about it all the time. That was his view. Everything's view, a view. So that means he was as blind as a bat, we say in English. He saw those fish in his boat every single day, moving their bodies. Evidently, to the mother, evidently they were suffering. They're not happy, but they're not shouting, they don't have a voice. They don't have limbs, they can't leap out of the boat. The best they can do is move their body. So he, and this is my point, because he had attachment which projected his fantasy onto the, calling it beautiful, calling it wonderful, because it gave him pleasure. So it looked good to him. That means he could never see the suffering of the fish in the boat. All those years. All those years. This is a simple example of how attachment functions. The mother, not having any attachment to killing fish, did not have veils in front of her eyes, in other words. She could see clearly and evidently the fish weren't happy. This is how attachment works. We project our own fantasy onto things. We project our view onto things, and attachment necessarily paints a very perfect picture. And it blinds us from seeing the harm we do to others. So that's why we eat cake out of attachment. The cake looks divine. You adore your boyfriend out of attachment. But we also harm each other because of attachment. So let's say a person is really attached to sex. Really attached. I'm not being fundamentalist here or even judgmental. It's analysing our minds. If we're really, an attachment is obsessed with it, thinking about it all the time, always wanting to have it, be close to it, near it. We all know that. Look at when we feel attached to food. Most of us are attached to food. Think about it all the time. Think about what to have, when not to have, this one, that one, you know. Or if you're attached, let's say, to jumping on girls all day or jumping on boys all day. Then of course, because, you know, if you rape people, you've got to use violence. But if you don't rape people, you've got to seduce them, don't you? You've got to be nice and cute and show like you like them, which is why we think when a person's attached to us, we think they love us. And then we're devastated when we realise they're just, you know, they don't love us at all. This is very common among all of us. But it looks nice, doesn't it? It doesn't look brutal. Rape looks brutal. Anyway, it's got little to do with sex, it seems to me. It's just violence, you know. But attachment to a person's body, you've got to behave nicely. They will run away otherwise. So you've got to be nice to them and seduce them and make... In other words, we are fooled by that, and we think the person actually loves us. We're often devastated when we realise they don't love us, that it's attached to a bit of your body. I mean, we all know this. So attachment is hard to see how it blinds us. We don't realise that we're using it to harm each other in ordinary daily life all the time. So the fishing is a really good example, and how it blinds us from seeing the truth, from seeing where the other person is coming from, to see the reality. Those fish were evidently not happy. I remember always a quote, you know, a video of a man in an Inuit, from Alaska. We call them Eskimos, you know. They bash baby seals to death. That's their culture. Well, this man was very upset with the animal rights people. How dare these people criticise my culture, he said. So he's a nice guy. He doesn't bash his wife. You know, he doesn't bash his wife's head. He bashes baby seals, because that's the karmic imprint. Then he's born into a culture where they do that. So you know, your father teaches you, your grandfather teaches you, so you want to honour them, so you do it. So, you know, anybody with half a brain can see that that baby seal is not happy. And they have legs, and they squeal. Well, they don't have legs, not baby seals, no. They don't have legs, do they? Are we communicating here? This is attachment. We're all driven by it, and it blinds us. That's why you can't have much compassion for others until you've got less attachment. It's very clear, you know. We do have lots of compassion. I adore my boyfriend. I have so much compassion for him. With his headache, let's say. Oh, Robina's so compassionate. Looks after him day and night, gives money for him. But when he was my stranger, when I didn't know the bloke, and I heard about him having headaches, I couldn't care less. When he leaves me for someone else, I hope he suffers from his headaches. Same headache. From his point of view, we can't see, because we are seeing everything through the lenses of our needs. It seems so brutal. When we analyse it, we will agree. So the key point we're making here is not just so much how attachment causes us suffering, which is the first one. Here is how it prevents us from having compassion for others. It prevents us from seeing, you know, it causes us to harm others. Because attachment is so profoundly neurotically self-centered, it will do anything to get what I want. That's it. That's how it's so intense. So of course in our culture, because fishing is kind of considered normal, so in European culture anyway, Christian and, you know, Jewish culture, let's say. But let's say this guy was attached to killing poodles. Oh, excuse me. He'd be put in prison. He'd be hanged as a monster. Which also shows attachment, because we're attached to poodles as pets, but we're not attached to fishes, you know, because we're used to eating them. So it shows how irrational we are. Poodles and fish both want to be happy, baby. They're exactly the same. But because our culture is familiar with eating fish, so we'd see the fish moving in the boat and just think, oh yeah, there's dinner. But you see a poodle whom you're attached to, and you think it's like an angel, and you know, you'll get murdered practically if you kill a poodle. And if he'd been attached to killing poodles, he would have had to do it at night, secretly, you know, because he wouldn't have been approved of. So here we're emphasising how all beings, the poodles, the fishes, the humans, the enemies, the friends, from their point of view, within them, we're all driven by the same thing. It's kind of simple but profound, you know. And you can't see that if you're driven by attachment and aversion and ignorance. You can't. It's not possible. Because we're seeing our own projections. This is the Buddha's deal. And this is why we suffer. And this is why we harm others. So practicing this view of equanimity in daily life is really powerful. You know, I go on quite a few aeroplanes, and especially when there are really long lines, really long queues. You know, especially in America, when the airports are like war zones. You know, there's always too many people on the flights. People have to be thrown off flights. You've got, it's just outrageous. It's shocking, actually. So uncivilized. So there's always just, if you're in a long line at security, if you jump in, I swear to you, it'd be a war. I promise. But if your friend jumps in front of you, oh yeah, come on, come on, come on. But if an enemy, if a person you don't know, a stranger, a person you don't know, how dare they try to sit in front of me? Why? Because you're attached to one and don't care about the other. I mean, they're both urgently going to get home to their mummy. I don't care. It's so clear, you know. So every day we can practice this. Every day, question your assumptions. This is what we're talking about across the board. Looking in here and questioning the assumptions of the ways we just believe things are. Getting to the deeper point that everything that goes on in our mind is, and especially the emotions, they're all driven by a thought, driven by a conceptual story, an opinion, a viewpoint. Everything we do. Like I said, the one I saw, the Hasidic Jews, all the men dancing around, all laughing and laughing, all cheering, at a big stadium. They had a big talk with one of their rabbis, and they're all cheering, you know. Then I see the same group of Australians all cheering. If you don't know either one, if you don't know either of those cultures, what you see is a bunch of people shouting. So that's just the body moving, isn't it? Because I know what Australian rules football is, so I know when I see the ones all wearing red and white, they're all cheering for the Sydney Swans. And I can identify with it, and I know it. I'm going, yeah, yeah, come on the Swans. I see the Hasidics, whom I don't identify with. I'm not an Hasidic Jew. Then I see these weird people with funny black hats and men. You know, I mean, we can see it's all just projection. In the end, the bodies are doing certain things, but everything that is driven, whatever the body is doing, whether it's the fish's body flapping, with a person laughing, it's just body. It's just a body. And what's driven by, what's in the mind. What it's driven by is what's in the mind. What it's driven by is what's in the mind. That's what we have to pay attention to. And to unpack and unravel and become profoundly, intimately familiar with. And then the Buddha's view, as I've been saying, is distinguished between the neurotic, deluded, I-based, obsessive, fear-based, ego-based states of mind that cause me suffering and cause me to harm others, and the valid, reasonable, other-based, appropriate states of mind that be of benefit to me and others. That's the bottom line in the Buddha's view. So like I said, the Buddha's view, his expertise is the mind. We might think that, we mightn't agree with it, but when you look at a bit more depth, where it came from, and these amazing Indians, like I said yesterday, this extraordinary sophisticated view of the mind that they have mapped internally with the microscope of their own mind in the depth of this subtle concentration meditation technique that they created several thousand years ago. It still is mystical to us, because it's got nothing to do with the brain. I mean, the brain's affected, but it's not brain science we're describing. It's, it's different. So it's kind of an astonishing view. You can be, a communist could buy into this stuff. Not karma, maybe. It doesn't have to, it's not like religious in a sense. What time is it? Tea break already? Was it 11 o'clock?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? I mean, I'm sort of vaguely chatting away here. One here and one here. Okay. Microphones, please.
Hello.
Yes, really. Where's that person? Okay, let's speak. Go on. Then you, and then you. And where's that man yesterday who said, I didn't get him to ask questions. Where is he? There you. Okay. And your turn. Okay. There's 4 people. Put your hand. I'm sorry. Do you mind putting your hands up again? 1. You want your hand up? 2, 3, 4, and then 5. 4, 5. Oh gosh. Okay, 6. Let's go. Come on.
Thank you. I have a question. What if you no longer feel attachment and aversion towards others, only towards the self?
Oh, I see. Well, I think if I think if there's attachment and aversion to ourselves, which is very common, which is necessarily there, we absolutely no way you don't have attachment and aversion to others. I would disagree with that profoundly. Where are you? Disappeared. Stay standing up, please. I can't see you. So I would doubt that's true. If you're talking about yourself, I would doubt that I would doubt that's true. Because if you didn't have attachment and aversion to other people, that means you have indifference to them. Is it indifference? Because the only third option is indifference.
No.
So what do you have towards other people?
Compassion. When you asked us to think of
good,
somebody...
good. So do you have compassion for who? Whom do you have compassion for? The animals, the children, the poor people, the suffering people, the sick people, yeah?
And those who disagree with me and hate me.
And why do you have compassion for them?
Because they just want to be happy, exactly like you said.
So and what about the pedophiles and the terrorists and the murderers and the rapists? You have compassion for them?
Yes, because I know that they're suffering from something.
Okay, good. So then if you can see that they're suffering, why are they suffering? What's the cause of their suffering? Okay, what's the cause of their harming others? What's the cause of their harming others? Why are they harming others?
To satisfy a need.
And what need is that?
Of love, of acceptance, of...
Well, that could be, the Buddha would say, because they're driven by attachment to doing certain actions because of habit, and they just believe that by doing those actions they'll get happy. Is that what you agree with, that point?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if you can see that in others, and you're a human being with the same as them, you have a nose, you have a hand, you have eyes, you have...
Yes.
And you have hair, and you're the same as them. You eat food, you go to the toilet, yeah?
Yes.
So that means you're logically the same as them.
Yes.
Well, then what's your problem? How come you're so stupid you can't see that you're the same? Please, I need that answer. Huh?
I don't understand the question.
I'll say it again, rudely. How come then if you know that you're the same as them, you know you're the same as them, they're human?
Yes.
You know that. Well, how come therefore, because you're the same as them, how come you can't use the same logic? If they want to be happy and don't want to suffer, and they're human, and I'm a sufferer, I'm happy, I'm a human, and I must also want to be happy, and I must also want not to suffer. How come you can't see that? How come you can't see that about yourself? Give me a logical reason.
But I am the same, just as...
I'm sorry, what?
I am the same.
Well, then why can't you see that why can't you have compassion for yourself and realize that you want to have happiness and you want to have suffering too? How come?
Oh.
Huh?
I see what you're asking me.
Thank you. Yes, so give me an answer. You have no logical reason, have you?
No.
So I'll be brutal to you and tell you you're just being self-centered. I'm purposely being brutal to get you to hear my point. We're all the same. We love to hate ourselves. We think it's a damn virtue to think we're creeps. It's self-centered, neurotic, ego-based nonsense. Are you hearing me, darling?
Yes.
Thank you. You have a valid basis for having affection, kindness for yourself, which is the first step. Then you really understand if they're suffering. You say you really understand their suffering, and if you really do, that's profound. But there's something huge missing because you're putting yourself separate. That's very schizophrenic. So how about having some humility and recognizing that you are exactly the same? You want to be happy and you don't want to suffer, and then there's a valid basis for you attempting to make yourself happy and attempting to make yourself not suffer, which is looking into your mind and seeing your attachment and your guilt and your neurosis, because that's what's breaking your heart. Are you with me?
Yes.
Is it logical?
Yes.
Thank you. Give it a try. We are it's ironic about ego. We love to hate ourselves. It's very, very bizarre. Next person. Go, baby.
I have a few questions.
A few questions. Okay. Get them really essential. Get the essence.
Okay.
Speak close to the mic.
One of them is about...
Darling, speak close to the microphone.
Close.
Thank you.
Close enough.
Absolutely perfect.
Okay. One is about Vedanta and...
What, darling?
Vedanta.
Who? Vedanta. Yeah.
Vedanta, yeah. It's a Hindu...
That's right. Yes.
Okay, so, in Vedanta there is a way of finding out yourself by denying everything that you can observe. So it's called neti, if I remember correctly.
Give me a simple example of how it would work.
I'm not the body, because the body changes and it
okay,
goes
so then
towards
what
it.
else? What else?
I'm not the mind.
Okay, good. So you're doing that is doing an analysis of attempting to find what the self is.
Yeah.
Good. So what's the question?
The question is, in Buddhism, the void is somehow related to Vedanta view of Brahman, or
No, listen,
is there a difference?
Exactly. Listen, as I mentioned to you, you know that Buddha came from that tradition, from centuries of these amazing genius Indian thinkers, scholars, meditators. So many of those views Buddha would share as reality, but he went to a certain point, at that point, where, about the nature of self, and that's where he diverged in his own direction, and where he disagreed with the final findings of those scholars and those yogis, because his view of the self is, he would say, that there is no intrinsic self of any kind whatsoever. So it's not the same as Brahman, absolutely not. Brahman is closer to the concept of God, and that's not the Buddhist view at all.
Okay, and if it is so, would you please explain what the concept of void of
We began
emptiness-
doing it yesterday. We did that analysis yesterday. We did that. We might do more today.
Okay,
Go on, next question.
yes. Regarding Tibetan Buddhism, how you relate the worship or the work or practice with deities?
What is the meaning of what for you is a deity?
Well, in this particular case, I
So
would
darling,
say,
just give me your definition. What is it for you, your understanding? What do you mean by deity? Your understanding of it in Tibetan Buddhism.
I think I have different understandings.
No, I'm
regarding
asking you
different
what you think the definition of deity is in Buddhism.
in Buddhism.
It's not Tibetan Buddhism, it's Vajrayana Buddhism. It's common to all Buddhism, and it came from India. So it's not Tibetan Buddhism. It's just that Tibetan Buddhism is the only view of Buddhism that has the tantric view, the Vajrayana view. So it's Vajrayana Buddhism. So what does deity mean in your understanding?
I don't know.
Okay, good. It's the equivalent of the word Buddha. That's all.
Okay.
So what's the question?
The question is how to work with them.
Well, that's the more advanced practice, and we might go there, we might not have time. Next question.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, darling, let's just so I can't. I mean, I might go into that a little bit if we have time, sweetheart. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I have a karma-related question.
Yes.
How can I be accounting for something that I did in my past life?
Because it's your mind, your continuity of mind.
It
How
was
come-
which
how come-
I did those things.
Yeah, but-
It wasn't me.
Your continuity of consciousness. Sure. The you of 3 years old, when you ate that poison, when you did those things when you were 3 years old, like say ate poisoned food, and then that's going to bring consequences to you when you're 4 and 5 and 6. It's the same. You're changing moment by moment. You've still got the same. I mean, the body of a 3-year-old and the body of a 6-year-old don't look like the same person, but the continuity of consciousness is the same. So whatever you put into your consciousness will stay in that consciousness, whether you change bodies or change age. Same thing, same logic. You mightn't remember that you did it. That's not the point.
So this is just like a law of nature. I should take
What,
it.
darling? What?
It's a natural law. I should take it like it is. It's
What do you mean it's a natural law? You should take it
a
like
natural law, like
it is a natural law, the Buddha said, but what do you mean you should take it like it is? What do you mean by that?
Even if I found it, let's say, unfair to
What,
be,
darling, what?
I find it unfair to be accounted for something I did in my past life,
Okay, so you
because
find it-
I don't have the conscience of
I
that.
understand, but you don't have the okay, I'll repeat my example. If we take the view here as our hypothesis that consciousness, your consciousness is a continuity of mental moments, and it's the same consciousness. So you today, a man with a bald head and a beard, the consciousness in there, the Buddha would say, is when you're 3 years old with another bald head but no beard. That's a very different body. If I saw the photo of you now and I saw the photo of you as 3, I wouldn't recognize the same person, would I? First point. But you know, if we take this view that the continuity of your consciousness starting now, if you tracked it back, you'd know that there'd be an unbroken chain of mental moments going right back to when you were 3. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, then secondly, do you agree that whatever you did when you were 3 and 4 and 5, let's say in terms of diet, will affect you when you're 10 and 12 and 15 and 20? Would
I
you
do.
agree with that?
Yeah.
So then you don't remember doing that, do you? So your same logic would be, well, just because, how come I get cancer now? It's not fair. I didn't know that when I was 10 years old I shouldn't smoke. It's not fair. I shouldn't be accountable. You've got no choice. It's you smoke the cigarettes, it's your lungs, it's your mind. Just because you don't remember doing it is not relevant. The point of accountability is that now I'll learn from the mistake. I didn't realise when I was 10 I'd get cancer. Oh, drat, what'll I do about it? Let's fix it. That's the real point. That's the point about accountability. And the second point you made about it's not fair assumes that there's someone else judging you and saying you're bad. But this view has no concept of fair or unfair, because there's no judgment, there's no reward, there's no punishment, because there's no creator, there's no concept like that. Are we communicating? A little bit.
We are, yes. So a bit more. There is punishment or reward.
Excuse me. Punishment assumes a punisher. Who's punishing you? Please be
Life.
Don't be ridiculous, you're not. It's not logical. It's just irrational. The concept of punishment and reward is so deep in our bones, that's our view of morality. And that always assumes somebody will punish me. And it's going to be mummy, or daddy, or God, or the government, or some vague they out there. That's the dualistic view we have in our mind that is not rational. So it's not punishment. You do not say you punish yourself, but, you know, cancer is a punishment for your smoking. It's the natural consequence of smoking. Be more useful, be more intelligent about it. Punishment and reward is so emotional and ridiculous. Are you with me?
Yes.
Petal? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next? Next person. Yeah. We've got to really think about these things. I know your questions are really valid. We've got to really think this idea. You know, in other words, sorry, again, just in other words, stay there, relax, it's okay. In other words, when you go to your doctor and she says, you better stop smoking, baby, you might get cancer. You don't say, how dare you punish me with cancer? You don't say that, do you? And in fact, you would thank her for her kind advice, wouldn't you? Do you agree with me? No, I'm talking to you. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Well, then you've got to think like that. Cancer is a natural consequence of certain activity. It's just the way things are. It's a natural consequence. So here the Buddha's view about karma is a natural consequence of actions. But because we're so addicted to the dualistic view of a punisher and a rewarder, we can't get past that. It's quite hard.
In my example,
Give the man the microphone.
If I can give an example, punishment is a depressed life and reward is a happy life.
What, darling?
Reward is a happy life.
No, you're not looking at the meaning of the word punishment. At the meaning of the word, what it implies. It implies someone punishing you. Clearly,
If there is punishment without a punisher.
Come on, give me. Well, that's pretty heavy if you think that way. I feel sorry for you. It's ridiculous. Why think that?
Who's the punisher for depression?
I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. I don't agree. I believe when we use the verb punish, there has to be a subject. Someone punishes, someone rewards. And it could be you punishing yourself, like cutting yourself and hating yourself, like she's punishing herself. That's true. But it's a bizarre concept. That's what I'm suggesting you think about.
Thank you.
Just about one point about punishment.
Oh, go on. Okay.
It's not someone punishing.
Excuse me, talk to me, not him. I'm the boss here, not you. This is my gig, not yours. Ask me your question.
I wanted to make a point. It's just that these are consequences.
Stop. Please stop. Do you want to give a teaching? Do you? Would you like to repeat it? Or would you like to make a question? Or you're just agreeing with what I'm saying?
I agree with
well, then that's
what
all you
I
need to
said.
say. Sit down, next person. Unless you have a question, darling.
I have a question.
Good, I'm very happy to hear it.
You gave the example with fishing.
Yes.
What about doing fishing as a job, not as a hobby?
Well, it's his job, it's even worse. It's even worse. Come on. Sit down, relax. Sit down and I'll describe. I'll talk about it to you.
If there are no other options.
What, darling?
If there are no other options for other jobs.
I understand, darling. I understand deeply, and I'm not being fundamentalist. Let's do an analysis to see if we can just think about the meaning of these words. I'm not judging or saying, I'm using an example of an action that harms another, like say raping, like say torturing somebody. Humans like to do that. So let's think about these things. You can relax and sit down and I'll talk to you. I'll answer your question.
I have another short question.
No, I want to do... Okay, in a minute. Okay, good. But let him stay. Okay, so let's analyse this point. The fundamental point the Buddha's making, right at the beginning, is he says, what we do with our body and speech is driven by what's in our mind. First of all, would you accept that? So those Hasidic Jews all dancing, or the football fans all cheering, their bodies are doing certain things. And if you know the meaning of it, you know what's in their minds, don't you? So those actions are driven by what's in their mind. Do you agree with that? So good. So a person who goes out with a long stick with a thing on the end and puts it in the water and then cheers when a sentient being grabs the end of it and they pull it out and then the fish dies. That's called killing. Would you agree with that? Yes. Okay, good. Would you agree that raping is a person, especially usually a man, because he's got a big thing between his legs and it's very aggressive, he will use that and he will stick it in a woman and he'll be violent and he'll get pleasure from it. That's called rape. Would you agree with that roughly? Sorry, excuse me being blunt as usual. Would you agree with that? Thank you. So then you agree also an action, a person with a smile on their face handing over a 20 RON note to a person and smiling. That's called generosity. That's their body doing something. So we can deduce that there's something good in their mind. Would you agree with that? Okay, good. So then what we do with our body and speech is driven by what's in our mind. And the Buddhist divides into two things roughly. Those that are deluded, the actions that are driven by ego grasping, by attachment, by aversion, by jealousy, by anxiety, by depression. They are necessarily self-centered states of mind that harm the person. That's why I'm saying here, we think that hating ourselves is like virtuous. And even as I'm talking here, it sounds so heavy. We hear like, wow, that's so heavy. You mean I'm such a self-centered person? We're like blaming. But they're the cause, Buddha says, of destroying ourselves. And they happen to be the things that drive the actions of our body and speech. And they are leaving seeds in our mind that program our mind with those activities, with those tendencies, and they are the cause of our suffering. The Buddha would say that. You hear me? Got so far? Okay. So, let's say a person has got a strong, a tendency to kill, like the boy. He was so in love with it. That's what attachment is. And the Buddha's view would be it's coming from the habit from the past. So in our culture, he wasn't considered a torturer, was he? He's not considered a torturer, is he? Would you agree with that? He's considered a fisherman. And we think it's benign. I'm not trying to be sarcastic here or negative or criticizing anybody, trying to analyze actions. So then because our culture accepts it as something benign, but if you look at how fish suffer, they die an agonizing death. They die slowly. They can't breathe. They have to have the water, so they must die slowly. That, I would suggest that's quite suffering. Would you agree with that if you were a fish that were quite suffering? Would you agree with that? So then if you've got attachment to that activity, especially that boy who was so in love with the activity, he didn't just go do it in the weekend, it became his profession. Do you understand? So that means every second of the day, because karma is whatever you do with your mind every second. Every second your mind is doing something. Every second your mind is doing something. And it's either negative or positive. That's it. There is no option, basically, in this model of the mind. And it's variations of those, you know? So if you're addicted, which is what he was, to killing fish, then he was harming sentient beings every day of the week. His life depended on it. The money he earned came from it. He thought about it all the time. So you could say his mind was full of the idea of going fishing. He didn't think of it as harming. He didn't want to harm, because attachment doesn't want to harm. Attachment wants to get something. So that means that his mind is full of those thousands of karmic imprints, day after day after day. So that means, from the Buddhist point of view, if he's harming those fish, which we can see is evident, driven by his attachment, then we have to deduce that he sowed lots of negative seeds in his mind. Okay. Now, you say, is it okay? What about a person who says they can't do any other job? Is that right? Well, so frame your question exactly again. Frame the question properly. What's the actual question? I want to hear your words.
For example, if I am born in an area...
No, I know the meaning. Just give me a sentence. I want to hear the words you have, because I want to hear the assumptions in your words. What's your actual question? Don't give me the background. I get your point, but I want to hear your question again, the essential question.
If there are no other possibilities
so what's the question?
for jobs...
What's the question? That's a statement. What's the question?
Yes, it follows the question.
Good.
If there are no other possibilities for jobs except fishing, is fishing considered a negative action in this context?
Okay. So I hear you exactly. If you've got an allergy to sugar, and you get sick of eating sugar, but every food you buy in the shops, and these days I really hear it's true, there's always sugar in something. Your question is it okay for me to eat the food because I don't have any choice? I have no choice. I have to eat the food that's in the shops. Will I get sick or not? Or is it okay if I eat sugar? And please, will I not get sick? whether you have to eat sugar or not have to eat sugar, whether you have no choice to eat sugar or not to eat sugar, you're still going to get sick, because it's a natural law that sugar will harm you. Well, it's a bit like this. It's a bit the same. Karma is a natural law. If you sow a seed in the ground, it will bring a fruit. So the key thing about determines your action is the motivation. So the motivation that causes a person to even choose an action that harms others as their job, you know, like working in the fishing factory to make a fishing rod, working in a factory that makes guns, that's an action that creates, and that would be worse than fishing, I'd say, because your job is to make a weapon that will kill sentient beings. So that's quite heavy, isn't it? Thinking it through. And so clearly if you think I have to feed my 5 babies and I really can see no other job and I can't bear the thought of killing sentient beings and I really don't want to kill sentient beings, but I'll try and do this just for the moment, and you'll try and fix yourself and purify it every day and have compassion, that is clearly not as heavy as just doing it and not caring, because everything your mind does affects the karma you create, because your mind is, do you understand my point? So if you have to eat sugar, but you try and eat something else that has got no sugar to mitigate the problem, then it will have less result. So it's like that. So it's more intimate. It's not just, is it bad, is it right, is it wrong? Everything we do is mitigated by, is contingent upon what's in the mind, your motivation, the reason behind it. There's so many things that cause, that affect the karma we create. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's clear.
Thank you.
So
the starting point, though, for anybody, is the starting point has to be, I want to not do anything to harm others. That's got to be your basis. The wish to not harm others has got to be the basis, if we can. And then from that can flow other possibilities. But often we just think, oh, I've got no choice, and we don't kind of sort of care. That's a bit nihilistic. Have care, because you don't want to get sick. So you do your best to eat as less sugar as possible. Do you understand my point? You do as much as you can not to harm sentient beings, and having the sincere wish not to harm, and that could even open the door to finding a job that won't harm. But if you just go, oh, I don't care, it's not my fault, I can't help it, that's not helpful. You get my point? Okay,
yes, it's clear. Thank you.
No.
So it means that has also negative consequences, wearing leather shoes, for example.
Well, yeah, but more than, no, okay. No, it's way more than that. When we eat vegetables, billions of creatures were slaughtered. Okay? Billions. When you drive a car, I remember one time, I'll tell you a story, I always tell this story. One time I've got a Facebook page, and a friend of mine does it. I don't even know the password, I don't look. I get the messages and things. But I put a few years ago when I was in England, and I was in this cheese shop in Liverpool, and I had a photo of me buying some kick-ass cheddar. Kick-ass, you know the American saying? Kick-ass cheddar. Cheese, right? And then the fundamentalist vegan, the vegans, the fundamentalists. I'm not criticizing anybody, but the ones who are a bit fanatic and political and shove it down everybody's throat. This person, a couple of people, how dare a Buddhist not eat cheese? They were really shocked, you know. Well, I didn't want to be political, so I remember always thinking, I wonder how many bugs die on the road when you drive cars, right? So you, sure enough, you Google it, someone's done the research. Some Dutch guy had discovered that on the number plate of one car per kilometre or whatever, it's like trillions or billions of little creatures are slaughtered, smashed to nothing. And for the Buddha, they're sentient beings. They want to be happy and don't want to suffer, just like the fish, just like the cow, okay? So, I put that story on and I refrained from saying vegans and vegetarians drive cars. Do you understand? But I remember one guy, because I think my view is we're very attached to eating food. We're very attached to eating, the action of eating. So the only way the question is usually framed about killing animals, like you're saying, is usually to do with whether we eat the meat. So people who are, you know, and I'm not being sarcastic, I think there's more to think about than whether you eat meat or whether you wear leather shoes. It's true, we're benefiting from the animal's life, it's true. But what about all the creatures who die when you drive a car? What about all the creatures? Another story I read, and I put that online, a scientist in Australia, he talked about one wheat field, of course this must be everywhere, where they grow wheat. And what is the wheat for? The wheat is for the bulls, for the meat eaters, but most of the wheat would be for the vegans and vegetarians. Would you agree with that? So when the wheat is not growing, the field is, millions of little field mice live there. And he had photos of them. He said they sing love songs to each other. They were so cute, you know. So when you have to grow the wheat for the bulls, for the meat eaters, but mostly for the vegans and vegetarians, they slaughter the mice. Millions of them. Slaughter them. But this guy who emailed me, he said, oh, that you can't help that, he said. So when you're so fanatic about just eating, I'm not saying you, we're just obsessed about eating. But what about all the creatures when you eat vegetables? They're all bugs too. They're creatures, they die. When you grow rice, the millions of beings just drown. When you grow the vegetables, the ones who get killed in the ground, you drive them to the vegetable shop, they get slaughtered by the car. But because we don't eat the bugs and we don't eat the field mice, we don't think it matters. I'm not saying you're saying that. So it's a bigger picture than whether you wear animals' things or eat animal flesh. There's more than that is what I'm saying. Is part of the answer to your question. Are you with me? So in other words, the Buddha's view is actually this planet, and look at it, it's logical, is pervaded by living beings. You know, our body is a walking zoo. Our mouth is an entire ecosystem. Under our armpits like a zoo, and they're real living beings. They're sentient beings who want to be happy and don't want to suffer, you know, from the Buddhist view. So just by existing, we're suffering, causing unbelievable suffering to countless sentient beings. So given that we live on this crazy planet, and just by existing we harm, at least you start with the thought, may I not harm? May I do my best to do actions that have least harm for sentient beings? And of course, the motivation for not eating meat and not wearing leather shoes has to be compassion, otherwise it's just rubbish. But then, then even if you don't eat meat, like I said, you're still slaughtering when you drive, when you breathe, when you eat vegetables, so we can't escape it. So the more we're familiar with that, the more compassion we can have, and the more wish not to harm. It's the best we can do. We can't do much more, you know. You with me? You with me, people? That's being conscious. Whereas we have the view of, oh, well, I can't help it, so it doesn't matter. That's nihilism. Oh, well, I can't help eating sugar, so it doesn't matter. It does matter. You'll get diabetes whether you like it or not. Karma takes care. Is this view that everything we think and do and say will bring results to us. So the more we can be compassionate, the more we can be conscious, the more we can try and avoid, that will grow us, and that will mean at least we will get the benefit, and then we'll get less harmful to others, and way more empathetic, and way more compassionate, and eventually way less harmful. Do you understand my point? Good. Time for tea, or another question before we have tea. More questions? Yes, darling. Now, other people, who are the others who had your hands up? Put them up. Okay, go then, 2 minutes. Good, then we'll have a cup of tea. Okay. Yes, honey?
Could you tell me about the Buddhist view on parenting?
On parenting?
Mm-hmm.
God almighty. I think we have to, basically it's compassion. Okay, just brief, we'll go into this more because it's all the question of how attachment blinds our compassion. So it's a really powerful one. Let's leave for later. We'll go into that in more detail, which helps us look at the compassion wing more. We touched on it already, but we'll go into more depth later, okay? After the tea break. And I will remember. What's the other question? Yeah, please. Yeah.
My English is not perfect.
All right, darling, my Romanian is non-existent. So you're better than me.
I have a friend.
Closer to the mic, sweetie.
I have a friend.
It's not on.
A woman.
Pop it on, darling. Yeah.
I have a friend. He lost her daughter at 14.
14, the daughter died. Yes.
And she's devastated and
Yes,
continues devastated.
Of course she is.
But she told me that she had an abortion
Yes.
first.
Yes.
And in my mind, I have
Yes. You're relating those two. I understand, darling. I understand.
I don't know how to help
No, I
her.
understand.
How to help her.
You help her. Okay, if that's the question,
Yeah.
you help her by loving her, by holding her tight, by having compassion for her. Don't give her lectures. Don't give her reasons. Just love her, hold her, make her safe, make her feel like.
And
that's what you can do.
And her, what she can do to.
No, that's not your business. Just love her and give her
Okay.
courage, and then eventually when she's ready, she will start to heal her mind, and then she can work for her own, and if she wants your advice, you give it. If she doesn't want, mind your own business. Just love her. That's it.
I just want to help. Thank you.
Do you understand my point?
Yes.
Don't try, you see, we all there's so many people suffering on this planet. Our beloveds, our friends, our families, and look at the world. And this is a business about compassion, how you help people. So that at least, there's no point in giving her, often what happens is, and this is often with the parenting, we want to make it all better. You want to make her suffering go away. But you can't do that. It's not your business. Your business is to love her, hold her, have compassion. I know how you feel. I understand. Don't give her talks. Don't try to make it go away. She's got to heal in her own time. And then if she wants your advice, she will ask you, but don't give it unless she asks. And that's often what we do. And that's including parents, I tell you. And we'll discuss this whole point later. Yeah? Right. Okay. Have a cafe latte or something you can have down there. And your biscuit. And a cake. I'll see you in half an hour or something. 20 minutes maybe. I'll just sit here. I missed you before, I'm so sorry. I just came early, so I didn't know you were coming. Go on. Oh my God. Okay. Right. Oh no! Sorry. But he came for you. He came for you. He picked you up. No. That's something you know. So what's happening? Is it all right? Yeah.